is going on, YouTube universe? Welcome to the Hip and Shoulder, and it is that time of the week, ladies and gentlemen. What time? It's time to get those tips in, even if it's just a little bit. But before we dive into the tips for round 19, we need to take time to reflect on round 18, which for me was rather fruitful, because I managed to get 7 out of 9, which might come as a surprise for those of you that are playing along at home, because I normally don't tip this incredibly well. So let's have a look in reflection at how I went. We tipped Brisbane to kick off the round by 33 points. In the end, it was 37, so we got incredibly close. We're starting to get better with these margin battles, but this game, it was pretty easy to tip. If you tipped Carlton, I think you may have just been a Carlton fan, and I think anybody who wasn't a Carlton fan should have known how this game was going to fall, because Carlton are in all sorts at the moment. I don't know when they are going to win their next game, if at all. The next 2 games is where my blemishes crept in, because I tipped Collingwood to defeat the Gold Coast and I tipped Western Bulldogs to defeat Adelaide. This was a game that I rode all the way home, the Gold Coast Collingwood game, because it was a game that Collingwood should have lost by 40, 50 plus points given the scoreboard at one point in time, but to fall by only 6 points, you better believe I was on the edge of my seat waiting for something to come about, but unfortunately it wasn't meant to be. With the Bulldogs, I might just be in a position now that whenever they play a team against them, I'm just going to tip the opposing team, because Bulldogs continuing to show once more they can flat track bully the teams underneath them, but cannot defeat the teams that are above them. I was then green lit for the rest of the round. We tipped GWS to defeat Geelong, we tipped Richmond to defeat Essendon, we had Fremantle to defeat Hawthorn, Melbourne to defeat North Melbourne, Sydney to defeat St Kilda, which only just got over the line, thank Christ, because I had Sydney as my certainty, and for a long period of time, that looked like it was about to go down the gurgler, and we had Port Adelaide to round out the round against West Coast. 7 out of 9, very respectful. Could have very been 9 out of 9, had I just tipped Gold Coast because they were playing at People's First, and tipped Adelaide because the Bulldogs just have this incapability of defeating teams above them. But we'll take 7 out of 9, especially for one reason. As you can see on screen, congratulations to me for tipping the most correct amount of tips this week. 7 out of 9 was the most, the next best was 6, and it was done so by a huge core of the people in my competition. I'm very happy. Not just for tipping the most correct amount of tips, but my tipping in doing so this weekend has moved me up the ladder substantially, and I'm in sight of the top 20 for the first time ever. So we're making moves, we're moving, we're schmoving, but before we get there, we've got to look at total tips. And to no surprise, it is still Lana S. Skyvo leading the way, 116 tips, 3 tips clear of the next best, which actually now sees a 4-way tie. We have Beano's, Nado, JazzGuy13, and Macca0303, all 3 tips behind, rounding out my top 5, with MRL from PA, Frio90, Gramercy Riff 78, PMAC82, and Yarra Villa, rounding out my 10, with Timo IE tied for that essentially 9th spot. So congratulations to Skyvo for another week on top. Congratulations to my top 10. As for myself, I said I didn't think top 20 was in sight, but I have moved up to 26th overall, 102. You move to the top 20, they're at 104. I'm 2 tips away. I'm 2 tips out of it. This week could be the week that sees me crack the top 20, because if I can finish in that top 20 configuration, I will be stoked, and there are plenty of games this weekend where I think I can get a point of difference. It all kicks off Thursday night football, Essendon taking on GWS at Marvel Stadium. This fixturing has a lot of people up in arms, because we just saw last week Richmond Essendon dish up one of the most unwatchable games in recent history, and Essendon still have a couple of Thursday night slots and a few Friday night spots to go for the rest of the year. So there's a lot of people really hammering in on the fixturing here and the lack of skill that we're going to be seeing given the state that Essendon is currently at with their list. We've just seen another 3 players go down with injury. I believe there was another further injury setback at training to another player as well, with a further hamstring injury. I think it might have been Elijah Sardis, so I'm not too entirely sure. they're all up in arms. They're in all sorts, Essendon, and it's not going to help them coming up against the Orange Tsunami this weekend, because they're going to come down to Melbourne. They're going to win very emphatically. They're going to win by, I'm going to put a margin of at least 38 points. This is going to get ugly. Friday night footy at the Gabba. Could see one of the games of the round, and this is the most easiest tipped for me. Brisbane hosting the Bulldogs, and I'm taking Brisbane. Not just the fact that they're at the Gabba, but they're higher on the ladder than the Western Bulldogs. And we've just learnt over the last couple of weeks, if the Bulldogs are taking on someone above them, tip against them. And they'll probably win this game now that I've done so. But I think back at home, Brisbane, comfortably. We then head down to the University of Tasmania Stadium with Hawthorn hosting Port Adelaide. This is a game that has room for upset here. But given they're going down to Tasmania, they play a very good brand of football down there. They love going down to Tasmania, Hawthorn, and they've got a lot to play for here. They have a top 8 spot that they're wanting to secure. Port Adelaide at this point are just playing for a little bit of respect. I don't know whether Connor Rozee misses this week. We know Jason Horne-Francis is out for the rest of the year. That could leave some gaps that Hawthorn can capitalise on. I am going to go Hawthorn down in Tassie. They're just hard to tip against down there. Port Adelaide, though, as I said, there is a realm of possibility where they rock up and do some damage, but I don't think the realm is the one that we're currently living in. We then shift over to the SCG. Sydney hosting North Melbourne. Does Nick Larkey come back in? We know Davies Uniacke will come back in. Sydney on a bit of a roll. Still a mathematical chance to jump up into that top 8 spot, and I'm feeling that momentum. Brodie Grundy has gone to an insane level. No Tristan Cherry for the next 3 weeks, and North Melbourne are going to be missing arguably who I feel is their best player, because outside of Cherry, the next best isn't at the same level, and we're not going to get the same grunt work out of the middle. So Brodie Grundy's going to have a field day, and Sydney are going to win quite comfortably. MCG, Saturday night, Carlton hosting Melbourne. This is going to be an interesting game. It is a dead rubber game in all retrospects, because neither of these teams are going to be playing for finals this year. I think this is just for a little credibility, a little respect. Around the ground, Melbourne are probably better suited for this game. They are favourites, and deservingly so. I think if they bring Stephen May back in, he was a late out last week, but Stephen May, Jake Lever, that combination with only Charlie Curnow playing, could just completely shut their forward line down. Max Gawn will get the better of the ruckman. Christian Petrarca, Clayton Oliver, those types could get some ascendancy against Carlton's midfield. Going to be an interesting game, this one. Nothing to play for. Backs against the wall. Melbourne for me. Until teams are announced, there could be some shifts at CB change my thought process here. For example, if Harry Mackay comes back in, could be a tip that goes the other way. I still don't know whether he's going to come back for the rest of the year. I was reading that there was going to be some surgery that was going to bench him for the rest of the year. I don't know whether he's undertaken that. But for me, currently, it's Melbourne. Final game on Saturday night, Optus Stadium, West Coast Eagles taking on Richmond. This is very much so probably the only chance West Coast have to scalp another win. I'm actually going to go with Richmond for a bit of an upset, for a point of difference. We defeated them only marginally down at the MCG a couple of months back, and there were some players in that game that I thought really went to another gear. I thought Jack Graham in that game was huge. He now misses 4 weeks due to his self-reporting of the homophobic slur. Tim Kelly probably comes back in. He was omitted the week before, so does he come back into this game? Richmond have found a little bit of a groove. I think they ride that wave of momentum that we picked up with the win against Essendon last week, and we can ride into this game and scalp a win. I really do feel so. It's going to go one of 2 ways. Either Richmond win in a tight contest, or West Coast are going to absolutely belt us. I think, and I hope, it's not the latter, and I hope Richmond can pick up a win on the road and pick up win number 5. That'd be absolutely huge, given I still think there are another 2 games out of sight of this one that Richmond can pick up a win. And if Richmond can finish on 7 wins for the year, insane. But I think for this one, I'm happy to back my boys in. Sunday, first of 3, Geelong hosting St Kilda at GMHBA Stadium. All but a certainty that Geelong are going to win this one, and they're going to do so comfortably. 10 plus goals combined between Jeremy Cameron and Shannon Neal. Callum Wilkie might be able to shut down one, will not shut down the other. Collingwood hosting Fremantle at the MCG. This is a game where Fremantle's going to look from the outside and see what Gold Coast did to them and think there is a huge belief that they can get the job done here. Collingwood back at home aren't going to fumble this. I think they are going to win. Again, that loss to the Gold Coast came at an opportune time. There were a lot of players that weren't playing in that lineup that will come back in. Fremantle, just at this point in time, want to hope that if they do lose, they do not lose by a big enough margin, because they need to stay in touch of the top 8 within that percentage kind of realm. Final game of the round, Adelaide, Gold Coast. We saw earlier this year an outcome that fell the way of the Gold Coast Suns at People's First Stadium when these two teams played each other, and there was controversy surrounding that. I think at home, after Adelaide have just picked up a very good win on the road at Marvel Stadium against the Bulldogs, Adelaide are going to pick up a very good win here against the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast play well, but when they travel to places like Adelaide, they don't play the same type of brand that they do at People's First. They might be a little bit out of their depth here, and this is where Adelaide can start stemming the flow between where they're at and where the rest of the top 8 are at, and continue to lock up a top 4 spot. So, we are going with GWS, Brisbane, Hawthorn, Sydney, Melbourne, Richmond, Geelong, Collingwood, and Adelaide. As for the gauntlet, as I said, I'm still alive because I tipped Sydney last week. This is where we can play around with a few things. I mean, if we're going against the grain, we could go a West Coast here just to take them off the board. We could go a Carlton here. But given the scope of where I have landed with my tipping, I think the certainty we lock in this week is Hawthorn against Port Adelaide. I don't want to go West Coast just in case Richmond do rock up, and that game is probably the closer out of all the tipping lines that we've got here. And I'm comfortable going Hawthorn. I mean, we could also go Brisbane, but Bulldogs have done weird shit this year, so who knows? But I think comfortably, out of all the selections I've got left, Hawthorn is the way we land. We are going to lock in that selection, and that is going to be me done for today's video. Thank you for joining me as always. If you do enjoy the content I put out, I would appreciate it if you hit that like button down below. If you're new around here and you want to get on board the community we are building, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below as well. But that's it from me, guys. I'm out of here. Good luck to your teams this weekend, and as always, I will catch you guys next time.